What is your overall assessment of where this war is now heading?
For that, you need some historical context. Now, look, I used to be a Zionist. As you mentioned, I'm a Holocaust survivor. Zionism was very important for me as a salvation of the Jewish people, until I found out that the state was founded based on the extirpation, the expulsion, and multiple massacres of the local population. And that's not historically controversial. So I'm taking a longer view of this. And I'm saying that the present situation cannot be understood without looking at the historical context, and nor can we move forward if the present occupation and the suppression of the Palestinians continue. So Sharon, your previous guest, talked about the fragile coexistence. There was no coexistence. There was oppression, periodic massacres, land occupation in the West Bank, the continuous expulsion of the population from their homes. I visited the occupied territories 3 times now. The first time, back during the first Intifada years, I cried every day for 2 weeks at what I saw. So this cannot go on.
Israel has a right to defend itself. The question is, how do they do that appropriately? And how do they get rid of Hamas, if indeed you think they should get rid of Hamas?
Well, you're raising many questions and many fair questions. Now, look, I live in Canada, where this country was founded on the suppression and the erasure of the indigenous population and the utter denial of their narrative. And in Canada, for example, there are horrendous residential schools where a few decades ago, if a native child spoke their tribal language, they'd have a pin stuck in their tongue. Now, most Canadians are not aware of that history. Most Israelis are not aware of the history of what the Palestinians have suffered. They don't know that in 1948 there were multiple massacres of large numbers of people by Israeli forces. They don't know the history, the subjective experience of the Palestinians.
I've had a number of Palestinians, including a doctor.
Let me say one more thing, sorry.
Yeah.
Israel's right to defense.
Yeah.
Yes, Israel has the right to defend itself. Every country does. But Israel has no right to impose an occupation on people. Now look, I was born in Hungary. In 1956, when I was 13, studying for Bar Mitzvah, there was the Great Hungarian Revolution against Soviet occupation. And it was after that revolution that we became refugees and came to Canada. Now, did Russia have the right to defend itself against the Hungarian revolutionaries? You know, so, and mostly when we talk about Israel's right of defense, we're taking isolated Palestinian actions, but we're not saying that this population also has the right to defend against the occupation. I'm not justifying the terrible events of October the 7th. I'm talking in the absence of historical awareness. It all just looks like Israel defending itself. But against whom? Against the population that has been massacring in a number of thousands for 80 years and taking their lands and destroying their homes and jailing their children and torturing them. That's the history. Now, unless we know that, it all looks like this poor little country trying to defend itself. But against whom? Against people it's been occupying and displacing for 80 years. That's the history, as Israeli historians have shown. I don't make this stuff up. I wish it wasn't true. I wish I could believe in the dream of the Jewish state. I love that dream. Except I found out at what price, at what nightmare that imposed on the Palestinians.